Welcome to our Airmen in the Fight series. And we have an absolutely proven, outstanding, combat experienced airman with us this afternoon. Our Airmen in the Fight series is committed to providing the opportunity for Air and Space Force leaders to share their vision and insights. And I'm honored to be your host today, Orville Wright, your president of the Air Force Association. Today's program is a terrific event for all of us. A Friday afternoon roll call with General Stephen W. Seve Wilson. As I think most of us know, General Wilson is the longest serving Vice Chief of Staff in Air Force history. He's now winding down an incredible tour as our Vice Chief. Before we turn the stage over to General Wilson, though, I want to thank once again, on behalf of our Air Force Association, each of our sponsors. Collins Aerospace, Elbit America, General Dynamics, GE Aviation, L3 Harris, Lockheed Martin, NextEra Energy, Oracle, Pratt & Whitney, the Pentagon Federal Credit Union, Raytheon, the Roosevelt Group, and SAIC. Seve, sir, welcome to Airmen in the Fight. You have had such an incredible career. 39 years in uniform, commanded every conceivable level, 4,500 flight hours, including more than 680 combat hours. So for now, the next few minutes, all of us are so appreciative of the opportunity to turn this event over to you for some opening remarks, or you can just talk as long as you want to. We will have time, where we're trying to keep some time for questions and some Q&A at the end. And I know there are any one of a number of participants, some 500, I think, that would like to either thank you or ask you for some further elaboration. Today's roll call discussion, as it includes questions from the audience and the press also. For all of you, you can participate in the Q&A by using the raise hand function on your device. When I call on you, please unmute your mic. A standard call from today, lately for VTC. State your name and affiliation, and then pose your question. You can also submit questions, and I'll try to read them in writing using the Q&A function. And we'll share those questions with General Wilson also. Before, however, I open this up to the audience, and after your opening remarks, I'll have a couple of questions of my own. So, General Wilson, over to you.
Orville, thanks for doing this, and thanks for what AFA does for all of our airmen and their families, and for all the sponsors who help make this possible. You know, I'm, as you mentioned, the longest serving Vice Chief. And you know, that's a distinction nobody wants, but I will tell you what an amazing time it's been here in the Pentagon to be able to serve under some incredible leaders. You know, as General Goldfein, Chief 21 led us down a really incredible path, and now under Chief Brown, who I want to tell you has really got the staff moving, and the continuity between the two is incredible. I mean, it's really been my honor to be able to serve with some terrific airmen along the way. You know, I'm always the first to beat this drumbeat of urgency, and I don't apologize about it, because I think we really need it as an Air Force, as a department, and as a nation. And I've been shaped by my experiences along the way. You know, I grew up as an Army brat with generations of West Pointers in my family's history. You know, my grandfather was a General Wainwright's aide and G1 in the Philippines, and was a Bataan Death March survivor, and had to go through a time when the world changed. And I never want to have to do that. And so I've been kind of shaped by my grandfather, and my father served before me as a battalion commander in Vietnam. And now I've been at this for 39 and a half years. And what a crazy, wonderful, wild ride it's been. Anyway, so I look forward to the questions, but I'm going to be the unapologetic guy saying, you know, this sense of urgency, and why the Chief Brown's got us on this accelerate, change, and lose. And I'll be happy to talk a lot about that. But I think the Chief's got our Air Force moving in exactly the right vector. It's going to take all of us together, though, because it's not just our Air Force, it's all of us. And again, where AFA comes in so handy is to be out in the communities, educating families across the our nation about the importance of what we do and the difference we make defending our nation. With that, Orville, thanks for having us today. Look forward to the discussion. Look forward to the questions.
Thanks so much, sir. As you've talked at length about a sense of urgency, there's been an often used and understandable term, innovation. And you've led the charge in taking, helping industry go from the notion and the ideas and the potential for innovation to real lethal and warfighting capability. So could you talk a bit about connecting the dots between innovation and innovation to deter and, if necessary, decisively defeat peer threats?
You know, I think what Chief Goldfein did, and one of the amazing things is he led down this path that said, I trust you, I believe in you, go along, don't wait for us. And it was just really this culture of empowerment and this culture of unleash the power of our airmen. And, you know, when you had General Goldfein and now General Brown, who kept this continuity going, but it was really about this unleashing the power of our airmen and their ideas, and then how do we take those ideas and make them reality? So, you know, the single most important thing there is this culture of innovation, of we can do things differently. You know, Simon Sinek used to talk about, you know, over, not through. That's how airmen see problems differently. And I can't tell you how many times I've been out to wings and squadrons and seen these amazing airmen and their ideas. And so one of our things that we said, hey, how do you make that real? How do you take an airman's idea and turn it into something that is actionable, that they can do something with? So use it as an example. You know, one of the small things is AFWorks. And AFWorks was designed to be a connector and a place that anybody could go to and take the ideas and turn it into reality. And it went from an idea into now, you know, the Fast Company just named it as one of the top 100 places to work in America. And actually it was in the top 20. It was ahead of some of the big name companies out there as this place that people could come into, take an idea and turn it into something that's actionable. But that's what I'd say General Goldfein and General Brown have done, is unleash this culture of innovation to let airmen's ideas flow from the youngest airman to the most seasoned guy in a pathway to be able to do something about it. So a story I tell, let me give a quick story. I went out to San Antonio maybe 6 months ago, and I met a First Lieutenant Nadu. He's in the 33rd Network Warfare Squadron. And like any young lieutenant, right, he went to his squadron commander boss, and there's a wickedly hard national security problem that they were working on that he said, hey, boss, give me 5 people in 5 days and I'll solve this problem. Like, that's what any lieutenant would do, right? Well, it turned out the problem was actually wicked hard. And so he came back at the end of this time and said, hey, boss, okay, I've kind of scoped the problem. I need 5 more people in 30 days. Squadron commander says, okay, gave him the resources to do that. At the end of 30 days, he came back again and said, okay, boss, we've now really looked at this problem. It is really hard. And I need to build an interagency team. And he built this big interagency team that now doubled in size. And at the end of 60 days, he came back and said, we still haven't solved the problem. His boss still believes him. And a little bit of time later, they're able to solve something that had been vexing our nation. And I look at it and say, I coined this lieutenant. And I said, what you told me, lieutenant, is you didn't fail once. You didn't fail twice. You failed 3 times. But you were doggedly determined, and you were going to find a way, and you built this big joint interagency team to do it right. I also coined the squadron commander because I said, hey, this is exactly what Chief Goldfein's talking about and Chief Brown are talking about, right? It would have been really easy to cast them aside, but you empowered them, you trusted them, and now a national problem has been solved by this team. And it was a team led by a first lieutenant. I promise you that first lieutenant and all those who work for him learned this lesson of empowerment and trust and bulldoggedness and determination. Anyway, it's pretty amazing to see, and the pride and passion that they had. And again, let's tell you, the National Security Agency took notice. What they did helped, again, our nation, and it was a first lieutenant. I got story after story like that of these young airmen and lieutenants that you go, where do we find these folks? They're so passionate, they're so committed, they want to make a difference. And so that's what I think our job is at senior leadership, is to find a pathway for their success and help remove some of the barriers that have been in their way whether it be bureaucracy, you name it, that's stopping that idea from getting forward.
Well, thanks, sir. That's a great story. And I would add on that as you've recognized General Brown and General Goldfein, for the audience, I think most of us know, they also recognized you with a new award. It's called the Advanced Capability Engagement Award, the ACE Award, in honor of General Seve Wilson. So just as you described, you've taken the opportunities for innovation and a more responsive integration of advanced technologies into our weapon systems, and you've connected the dots. You've empowered those incredible Americans in uniform and in industry, by the way, they're partners in industry, to identify those technologies that help us stay ahead of peer threats. So again, congratulations on the ACE Award, aptly named Advanced Capabilities Engagement Award, and will be in perpetuity as an award for our Air Force, Air and Space Force, by the way, members. So how has the COVID pandemic affected the Air Force's ongoing operations? Multiple ways, I'm sure, but specific to the pilot shortage. You know, do we still have a pilot shortage, or because of the impact on airlines as the world changed for the availability of pilots, or other impacts of COVID on Air Force operations, including readiness, that you might talk about?
Let me comment on a couple of things there. First of all, you know, there was no playbook for this COVID. So what I tell you is the commanders out in the field who are dealing with it have been truly exceptional. All different, all unique circumstances, and they're figuring it out. They're working with the local communities, the mayors, the governors, their civic leaders, and they're finding a way to be able to fight through COVID. You know, whether it be blue and silver flights and different shifts. Again, making sure we're taking care of our most important resource, our people, making sure they're safe, but also being able to do the mission. You know, specifically to our pilot training, we had a pretty big goal as what we wanted to be able to get to in terms of production. And the number was about 1,350 folks this last year. You know, Brad Webb and his team at AETC and all the wing commanders out there weren't quite able to do that, but they were able to produce about 1,250 pilots this last year. And the things they have underway, whether it be pilot training 2.0 and now 2.5 that they're doing at Advanced Air Force Base, we think there's ability to produce pilots even faster. We again have an ambitious goal moving forward. So we didn't quite meet the goal that we had set, but they did Herculean jobs out at all the bases to be able to continue to produce in spite of COVID. You know, let's take BMT. You know, we had a big debate here in the department, and there was those who wanted to stop basic military training. And we said, hey, we can't do that. It has too big of impact. There's 30,000 airmen who go through BMT every year, and that will back up and chug down the system, and it'll take us a really long time to recover from this. So Brad Webb and his team figured out a way to do it. And whether they, you know, split operations at Keesler, whether they set up, you know, small little pods so that if one pod was infected, I could basically move them out of to keep the pipeline training moving. So while we did have to take a reduction initially on it, you know, within a few months they were back up at full capacity, and we ended up finishing the year with the number of people we needed coming into the force. So again, my hat's off to the commanders in the field at all levels who were able to find a way to do it in spite of COVID. And so, you know, yes, we've seen some impacts, but I would say that you know, again, in the maintenance career field, they looked at it as an opportunity, and the opportunity is, okay, well, while we may not be flying as much initially, I'm going to use this time to be able to fix all the snags on the airplanes and get them actually in a better place, so that when we do start flying heavy, that I'll be able to produce the sorties that I need. Again, the commanders in the field at every level, from depots to the training command to all the FTUs, just grinded it out, and I'm making a huge, again, doing what you'd expect airmen to do, right? Figuring out a way and making the impossible look easy.
Yes, sir. Well, I guarantee you, your enthusiasm and glass half full view of the world is infectious. So, hey, sir, from from our chairman of the Air Force Association. I'll just read from Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force number 14, Gerald Murray. His toast to you for an incredible career, and thanks for being with us today. And our Air Force Association truly is honored, and wishing you and Nancy all the best in phase 2 of your time, and we'll probably not let you get too far before we keep bothering you for advice and encouragement for your Air Force Association. Again, unmute your mic. This can be live streamed. If you have a question, we'll call on you when you raise your hand, as I see hands being raised. But I'll also, as we wait for hands to be raised, offer some more congratulations from your New Zealand Air Attaché, on behalf of his Chief of Staff of the New Zealand Air Force. Thanks for your support for all the international partners, and particularly for the New Zealanders down at the bottom of the Pacific, but also very close to the threat and such an important ally for us.
And I've visited New Zealand during my time here. It's a really special place. We just finished our what we call a Five Eyes Capability Development Council, which New Zealand participated in within the last 10 days. And the basic message is, hey, how do we all work together as partners? What's the capability that we need together? And how do we leverage the strengths of all of us to produce that capability on a relevant timeline? So both New Zealand, Australia, Canada, and the UK participated in our Five Eyes Capabilities Development Council, and they're again, incredible partners for us.
Thanks, sir. This is great. Next question. The Air Force has sought to leverage commercial practices in recent years to improve processes and save money. Which of these, now being practiced at the functional or squadron level, have produced the greatest savings or increase in speed? And what other commercial methods do you have your eye on right now?
Well, I'd say both. Let me, which one is it? Commercial best practices and processes? Yeah, all the above. Let me give you another quick story. So 4 captains at SOS came to me and talked about how do we use automation to help us speed up processes that can help airmen save time. And one of the ones they looked at is when we PCS. Right? So every year the Air Force PCSs about 60,000 people a year. So these 4 captains said, hey, I'm going through a PCS process. It's taken way too many touch points and way too much time. And yet we do this at every wing and every squadron and every unit, people that do permanent change of station. So how do we speed up both the RIP and the orders process? And so these airmen looked at how industry did it. They made a couple of bots. This bots, one they called Jack and the other one called Jill. One gave you the RIP and one gave you the orders. And now we took what was taking in a neighborhood of 140 days before you got your orders. Now is under 20 days. And instead of doing multiple touch points, it's now 1 touch point, 20 days, RIP and orders. And we think we saved 1,100 man years on that one process, right? And I said, okay, so how many other processes like that do we have across our Air Force? And how do we look to, again, to save airmen time and to have people do things differently? So that would be one example that I would tell you that's out there, and there's lots of them. So if we look at automation and what humans are good at and what machines are good at, and we made a trip out to visit the AT&T Global Operations Center. And AT&T is in the business of connecting folks. Don't give me the exact number, but it's something like they're in 160 countries and have excess of 2 billion customers. And we looked at how they manage their global operations and the size of what their ops center is, and how they use AI to help them do with automation. And then we said, okay, so how would we use that, whether it be in our DGSs and our AOCs, and how would we leverage, again, what commercial best practices are already doing with process improvements to be able to repurpose manpower, again, to put humans at what humans are good at, machines and machines are good at, and take the people and put them in places that we know we already have shortages. That's one of the ideas that we're out there exploring. But again, our industry partners are doing some incredible things. We have a lot to learn from them. We know we do some things well. We know that industry's best practices are in some areas incredible. So how would we leverage that and take the best of what industry's doing and roll it into what we're doing across our Air Force.
Thanks, sir. Great points. And we'll have, I'm sure, some more questions from industry. At the same time, we've got our media with us today, our defense news media. And I'd be remiss if I didn't start out with our longtime Air Force Magazine reporter, John Turpak. So John, if you can test your mic and unmute, we're always interested in your questions.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Hi, John. Got you loud and clear.
Oh,
Sure.
great. Thanks very much. Thanks for your service, General. Appreciate the time that you've spent with us over the years. I'd like you to elaborate a little bit more on things that were done during the pandemic so far, especially where people made an opportunity out of the stand down, the drawdown. You mentioned some of the maintenance people got ahead of the work on the maintenance. Talk to us about what happened at the depots, whether there were any opportunities to do some testing, perhaps, of things that could benefit from having fewer commercial airlines in the skies, or maybe some work that was done on the ranges.
Yeah, John, I think, certainly there were opportunities to do all that. And I would tell you that across every one of our functional areas, people looked at, that was the kind of the mantra. How do we, while this is a big challenge, how would we look at this as an opportunity, and what would we do differently? And what will we never go back to? So let's just take, here we are doing this today via, a WebEx Zoom type of thing. We increased our CIO folks and our A6 increased our bandwidth something like 6,000%, right? And so we have a lot of people teleworking, and we've said, hey, teleworking may be how we do business in the future. What is work, wherever you work, however you work, look differently? Could an airman at pick a base, Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in the future, maybe flying A-10s when it becomes time for a staff assignment, rather than actually PCS his family, would he stay there and work at Langley Air Force Base on the headquarters or the Pentagon in a staff assignment and do it remotely from Davis-Monthan? Or he maybe traveled to those locations to his parent headquarters once a month or something like that, and save the PCS expenses, save moving the family, keep quality life and quality of service for his family and his kids. And I go, we need to be looking at opportunities like that. Let's just, go back to, local wing levels. I've been to 4 or 5 wings now in post-COVID, and I've seen the medical group and how we do drive-up pharmacy now, and how we're doing the medical group and how we're taking care of airmen and their families is done differently, whether it be pharmacy, whether it be telehealth. There's been lots of changes that have happened that I think we won't go back to, that COVID has opened some doors, and we've stepped through, and we've now looked at it and said, hey, that's probably a better way of doing business. So I tell you, John, across all those areas, we're going to use this as an opportunity to say, okay, or now let's do it, or reset, rechange. What does this force us to do differently, and what will we never go back, because this has made it actually better?
Could you also talk to the depot situation? Did things slow down or speed up, or
John,
were you right on schedule?
Well, no, John, I think they initially did, as we took, health and safety downtime to make sure we could do that right. But I think if you were to go visit any of the depots today, what they'd say is they returned to full capacity really quickly in how they did it. And they're looking at not only got back to full capacity, did this allow me to, would I streamline things, and how would I do that a little bit differently? And so, Artie Bunch and his pros at AFMC, again, unbelievable what they're doing. But every depot, initially we stopped, and then we put into place the processes and the safety procedures to ensure that we can continue to maintain fleets of, quite frankly, old airplanes, and do it safely and efficiently. And his depots are back and humming.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, sir. Moving around in our subject matter a bit, Mike Ginn had his hand up. Mike, if you can come up voice rather than my reading of your words, I think General Wills would love to hear from you. Mike Gannon out there, one of our Air Force civic leaders.
Oh, man. He is one of our terrific Air Force civic leaders.
Hello, Mike. Well, I'll read his words from Mike Gannon, again, one of our Air Force civic leaders. It's been an honor to serve with you, Seve, and looks forward to staying in touch as Mike represents SMC and the U.S. Space Force as one of our civic leaders. Well, since it is Friday afternoon and the
Can I take a second just to,
Yes, sir.
all of our civic leaders? So Nancy and I have got to travel with our civic leaders on 3 or 4 different occasions. They do an incredible job for all of our bases and communities. They're so well connected. They're so helpful to the leadership teams in place, and they're also really helpful to the chief and me. So that, I'll use as an example. We took a trip to the Pacific, and we were talking about the importance for airmen and their families of a couple things, about schools and about reciprocity, and recently about how to make sure all of our airmen feel safe and included in the communities. But during one of these trips, we said, hey, reciprocity is important to our spouses. We shouldn't make it hard to go to work. Literally, when we came back from the trip, within 3 days, Vicki McCall and her team said, hey, we have talked to the governor and the delegation, and we've got legislation passed to be able to give. If you're coming to Utah, you get 5 years. It doesn't matter what you're doing to be able to do that. And that, again, all the civic leaders took that to their communities, and the action that they were able to move forward on getting reciprocity in the states was incredible. So to Mike and the community civic leaders who support our airmen and their families, they do this out of the goodness of their heart. They're true patriots, and they're really, really helpful, and we can't thank them enough. They do a bunch of stuff behind the scenes that nobody knows about. Again, all helpful to airmen and their families.
Thanks, sir. So to sort of staying with the theme, Friday afternoon in the All Ranks Club, any question is a good question. So is the F-35 the last manned fighter?
I have no idea. We're certainly exploring a lot of unmanned stuff, and we're seeing some more technologies taking us. Was it the last one? I have no idea if it's going to be the last one. But I will tell you, we're going to look at how do we do things differently. How do we again use where technology's leading us with automation. Dr. Roper, you've heard him talk about, and we've talked about, hey, how do you have an R2-D2 in the cockpit so that it may be a manned platform with numerous unmanned platforms, all as a team. And again, letting machines do what machines are very capable of doing, and let humans do what humans are better at. And whether it be Skyborg or some of our other concepts are out there that we're moving out on, and our great teammates at AFRL exploring with options with DARPA and others. There's some amazing technology, but I won't be the guy that says, we've built the last manned platform. I think there's still a really important role for people in the air dominance business, and how we do that, we're gonna see.
Thanks, sir. Another congrats and thanks for your leadership and service from retired Major General Burner, Steve Sargent. All the best to you and Nancy as you begin what we all know will be another amazing chapter in your life.
Yeah, General Sargent was my boss at Nellis when he ran there as a commandant on the weapons school and went on to do great things in our Air Force. And him and Vicki are terrific. Thank you.
Hey, sir, a lot of interest in the press this week, the new electronic warfare strategy that's been released. Could you talk about the importance of electronic warfare and your thinking in this important warfighting area?
Thank you for teeing this one up, because this one I'm really passionate about, and I'm really glad to see the strategy roll out. And we've had, we had and again, it was a terrible, the acronym of the team and the enterprise capability development team. I forget the acronym we used, but it was about, hey, we need to really do a deep dive on electronic warfare, electromagnetic superiority, EMS. And so General Trout Gaedeke led our effort in that across the the staff. We did a 1-year deep dive look at it and took away, okay, a lot is atrophied in that. And as we look to the future, again, I'm a passionate zealot on spectrum superiority, that if we don't dominate the spectrum, we will lose across all the domains. It doesn't matter what domain you have, right? Air, space, cyber, maritime, land. We need to, that is, it's a critical aspect of warfighting. And I said, imagine, if you will, a big guerrilla push at Nellis. And I said, if somebody's jamming the GPS and the comm and the data link and your radar and whatever sensor you have, I go, that's not science fiction. That capability exists. So we have to be able to fight through it and be able to dominate in that spectrum. And so we've now got a lot of efforts underway to do that. And Tim Hawk and his team at 16th Air Force and Mary O'Brien here on the 826 staff to do just that, because we know that this information superiority relies upon spectrum superiority. And so so I'm really happy to see it come out today. I think it's something we used to do as an Air Force really good, but as we started focusing on violent extremists, we paid it short shift. And over the last few years, it's come back in. We got people excited about it, energized about it. General Grace Kelly at ACC will have a spectrum warfare wing standing up down there under ACC with the right talent to be able to pull the resources in and get it after, again, this electromagnetic spectrum, and to be able to dominate across that spectrum.
Thanks, sir. Another thought, many of us in your Air Force Association in our continuing efforts to be educated advocates for the public have been in recent conversations about the notion of long-range precision fires. You were in that business most of your career, delivering long-range precision fires, certainly from a B-1. How would we best advocate in a credible way for the national security capability, really, of long-range bombers versus this discussion that I'm sure is going to turn into a debate in Congress in the relative capabilities of long-range fires from fixed positions, long-range artillery?
Yeah, or what I've been saying in the building here is that as we look at this long-range fires and long-range strike, today the Air Force is invested across all those areas. So, the questions I ask is, okay, when we think through that, where and how do we get it there, and how do we defend it, and how do we see to it, and how do we sustain it, and what's the cost per round of this? And we have to be able to put a cost-imposing strategy on our adversaries and not the other way around. And today, your Air Force has invested in all those things, right? We've invested in the infrastructure and the C2 and the platforms that are able to deliver the weapons. And now we need to get the price per round down to it's something, again, that flips the cost curve, puts it on our adversary. And then I said, we used to have in one of our mission statements, this thing that talked about sovereign options. And so I think that's another important aspect of, I'm not relying on anybody else. I can do this, and I can do it, with, I don't need other people's approval. I don't need other nations' approval. I have options that we can provide globally. And I think that's another one that we need to use in our lexicon and our thinking. But I do think it's going to take this, there's advantages of having all of our joint teammates involved in this. But I think what the Air Force brings to it is that sovereign option, where we've invested in much of what I just described that's already in place. And so what we're talking about is the end munition. I'm not having to buy anything new because the bombers exist, the strike platforms exist, the C2 exists, and the infrastructure exists behind it.
Thanks, sir. That helps a lot. Again, we want to constantly strive to be more articulate advocates at every level, from every chapter nationwide to here in town. You're also an expert on the triad, and and nuclear weapons employment, both airborne and from in the hands of our great airmen at Epi Warren, for example. Could you talk a little bit about how we continue to inform the public and advocate for the importance of our Department of the Air Force investing in 2 legs of the triad?
Yeah, 2 legs of the triad, and I call it 3/4 of the NC3 that supports it. And then when you get down to it, fundamentally, our nuclear triad is a national insurance policy. That's what it underwrites everything else that we do. It's the Russians and the Chinese aren't talking about it. They've already done their modernization efforts. The Chinese are in the middle of their modernizations. The Russians have finished their modernization efforts. So we have got an amazing triad, but it needs to be recapped. We've talked about it for years. Now it's time to actually do it. And we've got every leg of the triad will be recapped over the next decade. It's really important. It's really important to keep on track. Admiral Chad Richards at Stratcom is an incredible leader there, and he's got an unbelievable team. But 2 of those legs of the triad are supported by airmen. And General Tim Ray at the Air Force Global Strike Command with the bombers, as well as the ICBMs and the Minutemans at our 3 Minuteman bases. But the whole NC3, 3/4 of that, the Air Force owns. And again, General Tim Ray and his team at Global Strike got great work underway to help make sure that it's so that any president under any circumstance can communicate with the forces and the people that he needs, however, and under any conditions. So again, my bottom line is it's a national insurance policy. I'll just tell you, as I go around, people will say to me, we don't use the nuclear weapons. They haven't been used. And I say, no, they're used every day. They deter great power competition. An example I would use and tell you about is General Mark Welch and I made a trip in 2014 to Paris to lay a wreath at the Lafayette Escadrille. And it happened to be the start of the 100th anniversary of the beginning of World War I. And it was a pretty somber day. We had celebrated Bastille Day after that, but it was a somber celebration because of this 100th anniversary of World War I, of which 16 million people were killed and 20 million people were injured. And yet, less than a generation later, we were engaged in another great war. In World War II, the conservative number was 68 million people were killed and 100 million injured. And if I say the war started in 1940 and finished in 45, 60 months. And so 1.1 million Americans, 1.1 million people died a month. A city the size of Cheyenne, Wyoming was wiped off the planet every day for 2,000 days before nuclear weapons, right? Before nuclear weapons. And so while they don't stop all conflict, they do deter great wars between great powers. And for the investment that we put on it as a nation, it is a price that we need to do. It's the national insurance policy.
Thanks, sir. We have a live one. Mr. Atchison Wilson, if you can come off mute and identify yourself, see your hand up.
In the 2016 general election, either you voters or the people who are going to change the nature of this election.
Can you hear him, Seve? Mr. Wilson, I don't think we can quite hear you. Get closer to the mic.
Can you hear me now,
Yes, sir.
gentlemen?
Yep.
Again,
Good afternoon, General. Thank you for your service.
thank you.
I'm a Vietnam era veteran, Air Force, proud of it. Let's go Air Force. And I sent in my question. I'm just a little concerned, or I'd like to know if there are any steps that's being taken to increase the minority representation in the technical areas of the Air Force. We have this Space Command, we have drones, we're not sending, we need to have more airmen and air crews. We keep speaking about ballistics and nuclear deterrent. So I'd like to know if there's any effort to increase minority representation, including women, in those areas.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for your service during Vietnam, and you're asking a terrific question, because what I'm probably the most passionate about in our Air Force is the most important weapon system that we have, and that's our people, right? And so how do we find and attract and develop people? I'm in the people business. And so you're asking a great question. This year alone, we increased our scholarships to historical Black colleges and universities by 150. We've also reached out and across all of our commissioning sources, whether it be ROTC, OTS, or the Academy, whether our enlisted airmen, to make sure that we represent the nation of which we serve. And that ought to be our metric that we look to say, do we look like the American public that we serve? And we need to make sure that we have no barriers from all of our airmen serving. So just as a data point, this year was the most females we've ever had at the United States Air Force Academy in the freshman class. And then we had 31% of the enrolled class were females. So I think we're on a good trajectory. We continue to know we have to do better. And again, one of the metrics that General Ed Thomas, who runs our Air Force Recruiting Service, is looking at is, again, do we represent the eligible population of which we serve? And do we have to remove any barrier for any person who wants to be able to serve to get into our service.
Thanks, sir. Got a number of questions that I either can read or you all can come up voice. From Mr. McKeever, Scott McKeever, you raised your hand, and then just to queue up Tony Rock, I could read your question or come up voice, and our Undersecretary for Personnel and Readiness, Matt Gorilla Donovan. Also, I could read your question and come up voice. So let's start with Mr. McKeever, and then hopefully General Rock and Secretary Donovan, please.
General Wilson, can you hear me?
Hey, Scott, I sure can.
Hey, this is a zinger, sir. So it's been an honor to serve with you, and I figured I'd get on here and ask a question. Maybe it's a layup.
Right, just Scott.
No, but if you could speak, I think I'm inspired by your vision. I think thousands of airmen are. But speak maybe your views on the power of innovation in a highly competitive world, and what the Air Force is maybe doing in this area, and how you tie this in your head and the Air Force does for the importance of making sure that we are and we stay competitive.
Yeah. Hey, Scott, again, thanks for the questions. Scott runs our SSG. He's got a team of very diverse airmen and a bunch of our partners from other nations helping him in his division, help us think differently and help us think through this innovation piece. So let me take from Chief Goldfein into Chief Brown as we try and connect this innovation theme and the continuity again across it. Chief Brown's got us marching to this accelerate, change, or lose. And if you look at the world today and you look at the challenges facing America and facing our military, and we look at what other nations are doing, it's a clear imperative that we must accelerate that change. And so the 4 areas that he's got us moving out on, the first and foremost, and the great question that came before this was about airmen. What are we doing to develop and optimize our airmen? And how do we get them the right education, the right training, the right experience to make sure they're confident and proud of what they do and personally and professionally fulfilled? And if we do that, it's magic and it's mission success, right? And so General BK Kelly, our A1, is moving out on how do we, again, optimize our airmen on Action Order Alpha. Action Order Bravo talks about how do I reduce the bureaucracy, the things that are slowing us down and adding drag to the system. That again, if you look behind me on my desk, let me see if I can even show it. Get in the right direction. This way, there's a big ice cube behind me, and the ice cube represents this people that are stopping the change and this frozen, that don't let the good ideas move forward, and it just frustrates people. So how do we drill out the ice, unleash the creative potential of our airmen? And again, when it's their idea and they see it come to life, they're vested in it and they want it to succeed, and it's magic when you see it happen. So again, we're trying to remove every level of bureaucracy that we can. Action order C is about competition, and to really understand the competition and to understand how they think and what they're doing and what their strengths and weaknesses are. And you know, the analogy we'd say is, if you were any football coach, you know, if you were Dick Saban at Alabama, I promise you, you're looking at game tape of every opponent, and you're determining their strengths and weaknesses and what your game plan would be against that opponent. Well, we got to really understand the competition. We got to understand it, you know, in the gray zone all the way through conflict. And again, we've got a great team helping us think through that, and that's certainly bigger than the Air Force. We're doing that with our joint partners to be able to do that, and I think we'll see a big education effort underway to understand the competition of which we face. And the last one that Chief Brown's got us moving on is the design of the force, right? And as we look to reduce the levels of bureaucracy and how do we optimize the force design so that we have the capability that we need with the right organization, training and equipping pieces in place to be able to use the force as need be. So those are the areas that we're moving out on. But Scott, to your great question, fundamentally, again, this is about people. And when people can see their ideas come to life, when they can see, when they're passionate about making a difference and making it better, when you put people in these organizations and you can get this, all of those organizations moving together, A, it's magic to see, and B, that's what our Air Force needs to be competitive in this world that we live in. And I use as an example, if you were to take today one of the many mega projects that China has, let's take artificial intelligence as one, right? It's not artificial intelligence that's being done by Chinese industry or academia or their national labs or their military. It's all of them, right? China's all in to win, and it's a whole of nation effort. And so again, understanding the competition, and I would contend I'll put our people and our views and how we, our democracy and our openness and our belief in individual rights against anybody. And so our airmen are incredible. I see it, and when we unleash that power and we let them do what they're capable of, you know, there's no telling, versus another way of doing business, which I don't think is as good. But we're in a competition for ideas. And again, our ideas fundamentally are about trusting and believing and empowering individuals.
Thanks, sir. General Rock, Tony Rock.
Hey, Vice Chief, I presume you can hear me.
I can't, Tony, and I'm looking to be joining you here in a few weeks.
Well, I was going to say, first and foremost, congrats and thanks so much to you and Miss Nancy from the Republic of Texas. And we're looking forward to having you back here. Don't know what your plans are, but we hope it includes the Republic. I wanted to, this actually is a question, I don't know if it's actually redundant or maybe nest well with Scott McKeever's question, but I wanted to talk to you about how we keep industry in the fight, especially non-traditional defense partners. We know the defense partners that are out there they've been doing this for a number of decades, understand our bureaucratic processes. But in a world where we have some non-traditional defense partners, for instance, folks that are helping us rebuild Tyndall, reconstitute Tyndall as a base of the future test bed, how do we keep them in the fight when our information age appetite is somewhat constrained by our industrial age processes? For instance, Patrice Melanson doing great work down there, but who is her wingman challenging the status quo when it comes to making sure that we can field next generation capabilities, and can overcome things like real estate leases that were built decades ago? And how do we overcome process fatigue and frustration and learn to adapt at the speed of commerce when we've heard from folks, big business leaders, sometimes in Silicon Valley, that they'd like to work with the government, but they just have to go where the money can be gotten to sooner and advances can go. So a long question, but
Tony, you're hitting on a really great question, and what we're all keenly focused on here too. You know, take Tyndall, the base of the future. How do we do it differently? AFWorks is a part of it. You know, under AFWorks, I'll call it the AFWorks umbrella, there's really three kind of swim lanes that Colonel Diller and his team working with Dr. Roper are moving out on. One is the spark cells at each of the wings with good ideas. The second one I call the medium bets. How do you do AF ventures so that venture capital money can flow in to help us with ideas and non-traditional players, a small business innovation center of excellence out there to be able to give out contracts to non-traditional partners. And then some other ideas on the agility prime, those are, I call it the big bets. But Tony, give you a quick story. I was at New York City maybe a couple years ago with Dr. Roper at a pitch day. And literally, they made a pitch to Dr. Roper and his team. They sat down, they said, if we like it, you're on contract with us. It was a one-page contract, and you got $100,000 swiped in your account that day. And they did something like 52 contracts that day. And I was talking to one of the ones who had won a contract. He said, hey, let me give you the tagline. He goes, everybody talks about how hard it is to do business. It was actually quicker and easier to get on contract with the Air Force than it was to get a beer in New York City. And I said, okay, can you repeat that again? Because I'm going to use that, right? I said, but that's what I need. I need the small businesses across America, which are incredible. We need to remove those bureaucratic barriers and make it easy to do business with the government. So we're open. We need your business, and that's what's going to keep us ahead. And I've just was out visiting a great young startup in Burlington, Vermont, that's in the Agility Prime area that's making flying cars, right? And I'm going to tell you, it's real, right? It's not fantasy. They built it. It's flying. They've not only built it, they built the infrastructure. And again, our small businesses out there and what they can do is unbelievable. We just have to untap it. We have to find mechanisms to get them on contract. And again, I'll throw out another name. Cameron Holt, Major General Cameron Holt is our acquisition professional who's head of contracting. Right? He is the Yoda of contracting, right? He's doing amazing things. There's not a more innovative, smart guy who can get to yes to get people on contract than Cameron Holt. So I'd say that, the message to all the small businesses, we're open for business. Contact us. We will show you how quick and easy we can get you on contract to work with our Air Force.
Sir, we have Jenny, I'll try to get your name right, Schwinkowitz held her hand up. If we could see if you can come up, voice, and then we'll go to Undersecretary Donovan. Secretary Donovan.
Hi, Jenny.
Hi, sir. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Awesome. Sorry I missed you last.
I probably have stories on you before you go too far. I have stories on you.
Awesome. I'll try and throw a softball question, then at least I think it's a softball question. But first, sorry I missed you last week out at Maxwell. I wanted to say congrats to you and Nancy. And of course, thank you for everything. Tim says hi, and we're very, very grateful for all that you've done for our family. But of course, since I'm an Air War College student, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you a PME type question right now. So I was wondering, in your opinion, sir, why has the U.S. sometimes struggled to achieve political objectives? And for folks like myself who will be graduating soon and then going to off to staff and those type of places, what advice do you have for us when it comes to providing advice to military leadership or other leadership in order to help achieve a certain political military objectives in an increasingly volatile and complex world?
Yeah. So Jenny, let me answer that in a couple ways. First of all, Jenny Schwinkowitz, for those who don't know her, I think was B2 female pilot number 7, and then went off to be a squadron commander and be doing great things out there now at War College. One of our really bright and shiny young officers in our Air Force. And you asked a great question. And the way I'll answer it, Jenny, is I occasionally sit in for the chief in the tank. And when I sit in for the chief, where I sit, there's a picture in the tank, and the picture is called Peacemakers. And it's military leaders giving advice, in this case, to President Lincoln. And it's our job to be able to give that advice and to give the best advice we can and to be able to do it. My way, I'd say in the tank, it's a very candid, frank discussions. But we need to be clear and logical and lay out a thoughtful, well-articulated opinion. But while we give one set of advice, it's not I'll use in this case the president, that he doesn't have to take our advice, that the president gets advice from lots of people. He gets advice from his Secretary of State and Commerce and others, and then ultimately makes decisions, the best decisions for the nation. But it is our job is to give the military advice. And so again, we have to be able to lay that out, articulate that, and do it in a way that is correct and true. So let me give you a case where it maybe didn't play out that way. We all know what happened in the early 60s with the Kennedy administration with the Bay of Pigs fiasco. Well, what was translated to the president at the time was that when he asked, what is the chances of success? They said there's a fair chance of success. Well, they'd done the analysis, and what that really meant there was a 30% chance of success. Had they framed the question to the president that said, Mr. President, I think there's a 70% chance of failure, I don't think the president would have elected to do that. And so it's really important that we give the president our best advice. And then, what the president's he's got lots of advisors. He'll do what he or she sees fit to do that, to make decisions for the nation. So we don't always get our ways on things, but we again, our job is to give candid, logical, best informed advice to those policymakers, and then it is what it is.
Thanks, sir. During
Thank you, sir.
during leadership perspective, and thanks, Jenny, and good luck at Air War College.
Thank you so much.
Secretary Donovan.
My battle buddy. Well, let me, his mic may not be working. Secretary Donovan was,
How's that? You hear me now?
oh, got you loud and clear there.
Okay, good. Well, I'll repeat my opening, which was, hey, thanks, Orville, for doing this fitting tribute to a great warrior and a great leader and great officer in our Air Force. And Seve and I had a little time together this morning, which I appreciate taking the time, and some good reminiscing and good ways of thinking into the future and getting his advice. And once again, I just want to congratulate you on an amazing career. And I just wanted to say for everybody to hear that I think your advocacy for innovation and technology will remain unmatched for a generation. It's just amazing how you always give all of us that perspective to technology and innovation. And I appreciate that. And I know the whole force does. And as you mentioned, I appreciate all the many hours that we spent as battle buddies and countless DMAGs advocating for the Air Force and for the Space Force. And I really appreciate it. And I'm not even going to ask you a question. So best wishes to you and Nancy for the next chapter.
Well, thank you, Secretary. So, what everybody knows here is Secretary Donovan is unabashedly an unbelievable champion for our airmen and their families. I got to see him in action as the Undersecretary, and then as the Acting Secretary, and now as PNR, and he does so many good things for all of our airmen and their families, and we can't thank him enough for his tireless service to our nation. So thank you, Secretary Donovan.
Well, thank you, sir, and thank you, sir. We're coming up on the last minute or two of this terrific Friday afternoon with our longest serving Vice Chief.
Keep rubbing that in.
Yeah, Secretary Donovan, well, you look a lot younger than me, Seve. You got a long ways to go. There's a lot of runway left. The Secretary Donovan had it right. An air warrior and an air warrior and statesman. So we really can't thank you enough. Multiple more questions here. Jeremy Nickel, I have to apologize. We're running out of time. Jeremy leads one of our overseas AFA chapters. And so thanks to all our volunteer AFA leadership that's out there telling the story. And Secretary and General Wilson has helped us be much more, I think, educated and credible advocates as we talk to the public about what our Department of the Air Force, our Space Force professionals and our airmen bring to the fight, along with their families. So with that, sir, did you have a closing comment or two? And then I leave time for I have a short toast.
Orville, to you and the whole AFA team, to all of our industry partners, to all of our community leaders, and to all the airmen out in the field doing the JOB. Thanks for all that you do. Thanks for making my job easy. It's been an amazing ride. I've loved serving with the people that I've been able to serve with. I wouldn't trade it for anything. And again, I'm an airman for life.
Well, sir, you'll recognize this bottle.
Yes,
And
I
I'm
do.
sorry I'm not there in person. If we were there, I knew you'd have one. Maybe you got one on your desk. But at any rate, sir, on behalf of your department of the Air Force, Air Warrior sisters and brothers, thanks for your leadership and your friendship, as I know it will endure for all of us too. To our Vice Chief of Staff of the Air Force, Seve Wilson, Godspeed.
Thank you, Orville. Really, really appreciate it.
And stink, damn Dewey.
All right. Your Air Force Association out here. Y'all have a good weekend and happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. Have a great weekend, Orville. Thank you.